For years, healthy aging has been sold as a dream, a supplement, a serum, a biohack, a promise that maybe aging itself could be slowed, reversed, or outsmarted. But the most important shift happening right now is much less flashy and much more useful. Healthy aging is becoming a playbook. Not eternal youth, not miracle pills, not one perfect breakfast or one expensive test that tells you your real age. The new center of gravity is healthspan, the number of years people can live with strength, mobility, cognition, autonomy, purpose, and connection. And that matters because the aging story is no longer just a personal wellness story. It is a public health story, a labor force story, a healthcare cost story, a housing story, a caregiving story, and yes, an investment story. The big idea is simple. The future of aging well will not be built around one product category. It will be built around routines and systems that help people preserve function. Muscle, metabolism, bones, brain health, sleep, immune resilience, mobility, hearing, dental health, social connection, preventive care. That is the real longevity stack. Today, we're looking at the healthy aging field as it stands now. What is strongly supported, what is promising but early, what is being overmarketed, and where the next wave of policy, healthcare, and consumer innovation may be headed. Let's start with the core distinction. Lifespan is how long you live. Healthspan is how well you live during those years. And increasingly, researchers, clinicians, and policymakers are focusing on the second one. The goal is not simply adding years at the end of life, if those years are dominated by frailty, disability, isolation, and preventable disease. The goal is to compress those harder years into a shorter period, while extending the years of independence and participation. That sounds ambitious, but the tools are surprisingly familiar. The strongest evidence still points to the basics: nutrient-dense food, adequate protein, progressive resistance training, aerobic fitness, sleep, preventive screenings, vaccination, hearing and oral health, cognitive engagement, and relationships that reduce loneliness. The interpretation here is important. The science is not saying these habits make people immortal. It is saying they help preserve function, reduce risk, and build resilience. That may sound less exciting than a biological age reset, but from a population health perspective, it is much more powerful. Nutrition is a good place to begin, because it is one of the most actionable parts of healthy aging. The message is becoming more specific than eat healthy. Across recent guidance, the recurring pattern is a diet built around whole or minimally processed foods: vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, fish, olive oil, and fermented foods. At the same time, the guidance is to limit added sugars, refined carbohydrates, ultra-processed foods, processed meats, trans fats, excess sodium, and heavy alcohol use. That is the fact pattern. The interpretation is that healthy aging nutrition is less about novelty and more about consistency. The best diet is not the one with the most dramatic claim. It is the one that supports muscle, metabolism, gut health, cardiovascular health, and brain health over years. Protein is especially important. As people age, they often need more protein to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. Many expert recommendations now point to roughly 1.0 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day for many older adults, often spread across meals. Practically, that means protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, not one large serving at the end of the day. Useful sources include eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, fish, poultry, lean meats, beans, lentils, soy foods, and whey or other supplements when food intake is inadequate. But protein alone is not the answer. The strongest strategy is protein plus progressive resistance training. That pairing is central because sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength, is one of the major threats to independence. Muscle is not just about appearance. It is a metabolic organ. It helps regulate blood sugar. It protects against falls. It supports mobility. It determines whether someone can climb stairs, carry groceries, recover from illness, or remain in their home. So when we talk about healthy aging, strength training is not optional decoration. It is infrastructure. Aerobic fitness matters too. A large analysis of more than 24,000 participants found that people with moderate to high cardiorespiratory fitness before age 65 lived longer, had fewer major chronic diseases, and maintained good health longer than those with low fitness. That is a crucial point. Fitness before older age predicts resilience during older age. High-intensity interval training, or HIIT, is getting attention because it can improve cardiovascular and metabolic markers in less time. But this is where the facts and cautions need to stay together. Fact: HIIT can be effective for some older adults. Caution: it is not appropriate for everyone in the same form. For people with cardiovascular disease, frailty, dizziness, uncontrolled blood pressure, fall risk, or other medical issues, intensity should be personalized with professional guidance. The goal is not to chase exhaustion. The goal is to build capacity safely. Sleep is another piece of the healthspan puzzle. Research is increasingly treating sleep as a biological aging variable, not just a lifestyle preference. Large observational analyses suggest a U-shaped relationship between sleep duration and markers of biological aging. In plain English, both too little sleep and unusually long sleep can be associated with worse health signals, while roughly 6 to 8 hours often appears to be the lower risk range. But this does not prove that sleep duration alone causes faster or slower aging. Long sleep can reflect illness, depression, medication effects, or low activity. Short sleep can reflect stress, caregiving, shift work, insomnia, or sleep apnea. The practical takeaway is not to obsess over one number. It is to treat sleep quality, regularity, and treatable sleep disorders as part of preventive health. That matters. Poor sleep has been linked with markers associated with Alzheimer's risk, and sleep is thought to support processes involved in memory, repair, and waste clearance in the brain. Again, this is not a magic bullet, but sleep is no longer something to sacrifice casually. Now let's widen the lens. Healthy aging is not only physical, it is social. Loneliness, isolation, and loss of purpose can shape health outcomes in powerful ways. Friendships buffer stress. Social networks encourage movement, treatment adherence, and engagement. Community programs can reduce isolation, create accountability, and help people access services before crisis hits. That is why the most credible healthy aging strategies are moving beyond the individual and into the built environment. Walkable communities, shared spaces, volunteer programs, senior centers, intergenerational activities, transportation, caregiver support, affordable housing, age-friendly healthcare. These may not sound like anti-aging interventions, but they are. If an older adult cannot get to appointments, cannot safely walk in the neighborhood, cannot afford nutritious food, cannot access dental care, and has no social support, then telling that person to optimize longevity is not a serious strategy. This is where policy is beginning to catch up. In the United States, Older Americans Month in 2026 used the theme Champion Your Health, reflecting a broader pivot toward prevention, independence, and community living. Illinois also established a commission to coordinate a 10-year multi-sector aging plan focused on areas like livable communities, health across ages, caregivers, and affordability. The fact is that these are policy moves. The interpretation is that aging policy is becoming more integrated. Instead of treating health, housing, transportation, and caregiving as separate silos, governments are beginning to recognize that aging well depends on all of them. There are also overlooked clinical areas that deserve more attention. Hearing is one. Many people recognize exercise, diet, and sleep as longevity priorities. Far fewer think of hearing checks as part of healthy aging. But untreated hearing issues can affect communication, isolation, safety, cognitive load, and quality of life. Oral health is another. Chewing efficiency, tooth loss, saliva changes, and dental pain can all affect nutrition. If someone cannot comfortably chew protein-rich foods, vegetables, nuts, or fiber-rich meals, nutrition guidance becomes much harder to follow. So dental care and nutrition care should not be separate conversations. They are linked. Now, what about the booming anti-aging supplement market? This is where investors, consumers, and clinicians need to separate promise from proof. NAD+, NMN, resveratrol, senolytics, biological age tests, and other emerging tools are scientifically interesting. Some have plausible mechanisms, some have encouraging animal or early-stage data. But many commercial claims are moving faster than human evidence. That does not mean every product is useless. It means the burden of proof is high, especially for claims about slowing aging in humans. Supplements may help fill specific gaps. Vitamin D, calcium, B12, protein, and other nutrients can be clinically important when intake or status is low. But broad claims that a product reverses aging or meaningfully extends health span should be treated with caution unless supported by rigorous human trials. Creatine is an interesting middle case. It has a stronger evidence base for muscle performance than many so-called longevity supplements, especially when paired with resistance training. It is increasingly discussed for adults over 55 and for women around midlife because it may support strength, lean mass, and functional performance. But even creatine is best understood as an exercise support supplement, not an anti-aging cure. Biological age testing is another fast-growing area. The concept is appealing. Measure biomarkers that suggest whether the body is aging faster or slower than chronological age. These tests may eventually help identify risk earlier or motivate behavior change, but the field is still developing. Different tests use different biomarkers and algorithms. A lower biological age score does not automatically mean lower disease risk, and a higher score does not necessarily tell someone exactly what to do. The responsible use of biological age tools is not vanity scoring. It is identifying modifiable risks: poor sleep, high glucose, inflammation, low activity, inadequate nutrition, frailty, or other signals that can be addressed with established interventions. This is where multi-domain lifestyle programs become important. The U.S. Pointer trial, for example, tested whether structured lifestyle interventions could protect cognition in older adults at increased risk for cognitive decline. Its intervention included physical exercise, the mind diet, cognitive training, social and intellectual activity, peer meetings, and regular health review. The important lesson is not just that lifestyle matters, it is that structure matters. Coaching, accountability, peer support, and regular follow-up may be the difference between advice and actual behavior change. That is a major opportunity for health systems, insurers, employers, senior living operators, digital health companies, and community organizations. If we think like investors, the healthy aging market is not just supplements. It includes strength and mobility programs, protein and nutrient-dense foods, diagnostics, hearing care, dental access, fall prevention, home modification, adult immunization, remote monitoring, social engagement platforms, caregiver support, and age-friendly housing. But the investment lens also raises a warning. Digital health, wearables, AI prediction, genomics, and remote monitoring can help detect risk earlier and personalize care. But they can also widen inequality if they're expensive, biased, poorly integrated, or inaccessible to the people who need them most. So, the forward-looking question is not just what technology can measure aging. It is what technology actually improves outcomes and for whom. Looking ahead, there are 5 scenarios worth watching. First, structured lifestyle programs could become reimbursed health benefits. If trials continue to show that coached, multi-domain programs improve cognition, frailty, metabolic health, or independence, insurers and public agencies may have stronger reasons to fund them. Second, state aging plans could become a major implementation test. Illinois and other states are trying to coordinate housing, transportation, caregiving, healthcare, affordability, and community participation. Success would mean aging policy becomes less reactive and more preventive. Supplement claims may face more pressure. Consumer demand for NAD+, NMN, resveratrol, and other anti-aging products is high. But larger human trials will be needed to clarify benefits, risks, dosing, and target populations. Fourth, biological age tools may either mature into useful clinical aids or remain motivational gadgets. The difference will be whether they improve decisions beyond standard markers like blood pressure, glucose, lipid levels, fitness, frailty, sleep, and medical history. Fifth, adult immunization may become a bigger part of longevity policy. In rapidly aging societies, vaccines are increasingly being discussed not only as disease prevention tools, but as ways to preserve independence, reduce healthcare burden, and support economic resilience. So where does this leave the individual listener? Start with the proven levers. Build meals around protein, plants, fiber, and micronutrients. Train for strength 2 or 3 times a week if you can do so safely. Maintain aerobic fitness. Protect sleep. Check hearing and dental health. Stay current on preventive care. Invest in friendships and community. Be cautious with miracle claims. Use technology as a tool, not a substitute for fundamentals. And personalize everything with professional guidance, especially if you have chronic conditions, kidney disease, cardiovascular risk, frailty, fall risk, pregnancy, or medications that could interact with diet, exercise, or supplements. The closing takeaway is this: healthy aging is becoming less mystical and more practical. The future is not about defeating aging with one breakthrough product. It is about delaying frailty, preserving function, and making the healthy choice easier, earlier, and more socially supported. For individuals, that means repeatable habits. For healthcare systems, it means prevention before crisis. For policymakers, it means age-friendly communities. For investors, it means looking beyond hype, towards solutions that measurably preserve independence. The most credible promise of healthy aging is not eternal youth. It is more years lived with strength, clarity, mobility, connection, and choice.